Thanks so much, Corky, for joining today. It's great to have you on the podcast.
I'm excited to be here, Josh. I was excited when I got your message wanting to know if I would come on with you. And obviously, the subjects that you wanted to discuss with me are close to my heart. So I'm excited to be with you.
Yeah, they're close to my heart as well. I mean, I've had family involved in law enforcement. People, I'll not say who exactly. Some of them are still active, but yeah, it's. I mean, I think I'm passionate about I guess the reputation as much as anything of law enforcement. I think it's something we were talking beforehand, but it's a bit under attack at the minute. It's almost become a trade that people would rather not admit they're in some cases for their own safety and for just for their reputation. So it's a crazy time in the world at the minute, and I appreciate you coming on to talk about this issue being so close to your heart. So yeah, thanks again for joining us. Tell us a little bit just about yourself and a bit about your background and how you got involved really in what you do.
Well, kind of my story is I played college baseball in my junior year in college. Started working with the church part time while I was playing baseball and going to college. That worked out very well. And when I graduated 2 years later, they asked me to stay on full time. So my journey in full time ministry started 43 years ago. I was in youth ministry in various churches, youth and family ministry, and then later on as a teaching minister, as a pastoral care minister, a lot of different roles
Mm,
for almost 26 years, I guess. And then almost 17 years ago, I decided that I wanted to get out of the church building and out into the community. Even
mm,
where I live, which is considered kind of the Bible Belt, I'm sure you've heard that saying.
mm-hmm,
In our area specifically, they call it the buckle of the Bible Belt.
mm.
But the
And
reality is,
where exactly is that? Sorry.
Franklin, Middle Tennessee, Franklin, Brentwood. I now live in Murfreesboro. We're all just outside of Nashville.
Mm,
Um, but even in our area where it's known for that, 50% of the people don't go to church, don't have a pastor, minister, don't have anybody to
mm,
turn to, nobody to marry them, nobody to bury them, those kinds of things. And so I thought, you know what, I want to get out there. It's great. We open our doors and people come in, but I want to go out there for the people that aren't coming in.
mm-hmm,
And I want to go be Jesus in the community. That was really my thought. So it was
mm,
always going out and being a missionary, if you would, in my own community. So I started what was known as community outreach ministries. We
mm-hmm,
did several different things. I had an opening, was already working a little bit with law enforcement at that time, and we'll talk more about that later.
mm-hmm,
But I also had a ministry called Outside the Lines for high school athletes in
mm,
public schools, where we take uh, our kids' athletic experiences and teach them life's lesson from
mm.
those. And as
Very
simple as, hey, if
interesting.
you're out on the football field on Friday night and the guy across from you is kicking your butt, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Because life's
It.
going to kick your butt someday too. And how you
Mm,
respond as an athlete is probably how you're going to respond as an adult when you hit tough times.
mm,
So just basic lessons like that. We also worked extensively with uh, uh, drug addicts who were convicted felons. We had a ministry specifically for caregivers because I was a caregiver for my two parents for 13
mm-hmm.
years. And that is a strong area of need and it's growing. So those are the things and the story, and that lasted for 16 years. I did those things,
Mm.
community outreach ministries, and then the end of December, I decided that it was time for me to move on, so I resigned, and so I'm basically kind of semi-retired now, if you would,
Mm.
but
Yeah. So
still doing most of the same things I was doing when I was working with community outreach ministries.
yeah. I mean, that's you covered a lot of ground there, obviously, in your life. You've kind of, I guess, you've been involved in so many different ministries. That's, I think, the sports ministry was very interesting to me, just as well, because I guess people, at a fairly young age, those teenage years, they can learn so many lessons from really what is a game, but it's a game that obviously it has rules and it's played in a certain way, but you can take those lessons from that, from the competitiveness of the game, and draw lessons out of that. And did you find that people responded really well just with that almost illustration of struggles in life?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, out of all the ministry that I've done, we call it Outside the Lines is the name of the ministry. That's probably the
Mm,
one that I enjoyed and I'm proudest of. I worked in that program for 25 years. I started that when I was actually working full time as a minister at a large church. But when I
Mm.
started community outreach ministries, it allowed me to really pour more about myself into it. So in 25 years, I literally saw thousands of kids come through our program, and many of them who are in their late 30s now still keep
Mm-hmm.
in touch with me. And uh,
Wow.
when they contact me and tell me, "Hey, I'm 35 years old, but I still remember the lessons from outside the lines," that's pretty meaningful. But that also put me in contact with all their parents and
Mm-hmm.
with the administration at Brentwood, where I do this ministry. They have
Mm-hmm.
16, 1,800 students. So it's a big
Wow.
place. And so I got to work with administrators. To me, it was just an inlet to the community to
Mm-hmm.
connect with people and try to be Jesus in their life.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. And did any of those kids grow up to be professionals, or did any of them do pretty well in that sort of athletic world?
Yeah, we've had several, not a whole lot. We have a lot of kids that get scholarships and play college football.
Mm,
Uh,
yeah.
Brentwood is one of the top academic schools in the whole state of Tennessee, public or private.
Mm,
And so we got a lot of kids that play what I call small college football. Uh,
yeah.
one of our kids right now plays for the Green Bay Packers. Uh,
Awesome.
he
Wow.
is left guard on the Green Bay Packers. So, and we've had others that have played too. So that it's been great to watch those kids, watch them grow up. But beyond whether they play pro football or not, to see
Mm-hmm.
the kind of lives and the kind of leaders that a lot of them have become.
Yeah, absolutely. And just from that seed planted, I guess, they can then go on and be, witnesses and lights in the worlds that they end up in, whether it's sports or not. But I think that's amazing. I'm an adopted Seahawks fan. I don't know. I'm assuming that you're not a Seahawks fan yourself, but no, that was just the team back whenever I started watching a little bit of the NFL. Um, it was really it was the year before the Seahawks went to the Super Bowl with the Patriots. So it was that the year that they had just beaten Denver, I think, in the Super Bowl. So that was the year that I started following the NFL, and so I asked my friends who they were Dallas Cowboys fans, and I said, "Who's going to be a team that's going to be pretty good for the next few years?" And they said, well, you really got a choice between the Patriots and the Seahawks. We think they're going to do well, so that was the dilemma. But then I just said, well, I'll go. They actually said to me, they said, well, the Seahawks is owned by the guy from Microsoft, and you like computers and stuff. So what about them? So I thought, well, that's okay. I'll go for them then. So that was my introduction to the
Yeah,
NFL. But
I'm not a Seattle Seahawks fan, although I do like their quarterback, Russell Wilson. Obviously,
yeah,
obviously living here in Nashville, I'm a huge
Titans.
Tennessee
Yeah,
Titans fan, big time.
yeah. No, the Titans they're doing okay. I mean, they're doing about as good as the Seahawks are doing at the minute. Neither of them are really making the headlines, but
Yeah, we were one game from the Super Bowl last year, so
yeah.
and got a great. I think they've laid the foundation to have a great organization. So if they
Mm,
get to play this year, I think they'll do well. I think they're doing something good there, and they're doing it the right way.
yeah. And if I was to move out that way, I think I would have to become just a little bit of a Titans fan. If not a diehard, at least sympathetic. Being a Seahawks fan, I don't know if I can abandon them, but I guess
But
living
again,
there,
I don't think the Titans and Seattle play each other very often, so you can be
no,
a Titans fan the rest of the
that's
time.
true. Up until the Super Bowl, really, you're
Yeah, that's probably right.
yeah, they end up playing each other. So, yeah, you mentioned then, so you've been involved in all sorts of ministry then. So, uh, sorry, just how did you get involved in law enforcement? Did you say what was the inroad there, into that
Yeah,
particular
at the
area?
last church that I ministered in, um, I, I don't know what really keyed it, Josh, and I don't want to sound preachy, but I
Mm-hmm.
just think it's what God wanted to happen. Um, I've always been interested in law enforcement. I think some of that comes from my dad. He's passed now, but he retired as a full colonel in the Army. I went to a military high school, graduated from a military high school. My son is a veteran, spent a year in Afghanistan, several years in the Army. And I see a lot of correlation. Those are people who protect us, those are people who
Mm,
serve us. And so I think that probably pricked my interest in law enforcement. Um, and the more I found out about it, the more pricked my interest was. And I just
mm,
happened to mention to a friend one time, I'd love to do some volunteer work maybe as a chaplain. Does Williamson County Sheriff's Office have a chaplain? Well, it comes up, turns out one of his good buddies was a deputy with the Williamson County Sheriff's Office
mm.
and had mentioned to him that they wanted to start a chaplain's division. So that
Okay.
common friend of ours put us together.
Mm-hmm.
Boom! Almost 21 years later, I'm still there.
Yeah,
Now,
great timing there.
I did it a little bit when I was ministering at that last church, but again, just like I did outside the lines. But when I started Community Outreach Ministries, it allowed myself to just really throw myself into it and into the
Mm-hmm.
lives of our deputies and our employees.
Mm. And do you find that a lot of people involved in the law enforcement world are already believers, or is it what's the kind of breakdown there? Are you sort of helping and supporting them, or is it almost an evangelical role in terms of you're also, ministering to them in a different way? Helping them discover faith.
That's a great question, and there's no way of knowing absolutely for sure. We obviously
Mm-hmm.
can't survey them. Uh,
Yeah.
I don't approach it as an evangelistic ministry. I teach in our training academy. I teach a 4-hour block in our training academy, teaching new deputies about the culture and how to navigate the
Mm-hmm.
culture, how to survive the culture, how to handle the stress. And I tell them right off the bat, I'm a man of faith, and I'm doing what I'm doing because of my faith. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
here to love you. I'm here to pull up alongside of you. I'm here to walk with you, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
job related, family related, whatever. Uh, but I'm not here to cram my faith down your throat. But on the
Mm-hmm.
other hand, if you ever want to talk faith or you want to hear about my faith, I would love to sit down and talk to you. So that's the approach I've always taken with law
Mm-hmm.
enforcement, and that has led to a lot of great conversations. We have, last time I checked, we had about 1,300 employees. No, about
Mm-hmm.
350 employees at the Williamson County Sheriff's Office. With their families, that's about 1,400 total people
Wow.
that impacts.
Mm.
I would estimate that 75% of our employees don't go to a church anywhere. Doesn't mean they don't necessarily have faith. A lot of them
Mm-hmm.
just don't buy into organized religion. They believe in God. They have faith in God.
Yeah.
But I actually found myself doing more weddings and funerals through my ministry at the sheriff's office than I was
Mm.
doing in an actual church, because they don't have, I tell them,
Mm-hmm.
they say, what do you do at Community Outreach Ministry? I said, we marry them, we bury them, and everything in between. Uh,
Yeah.
because we are, for a lot of those people, they don't have a church pastor, so their chaplain is their pastor.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that. And it opened up a lot of doors for a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, my church that I'm currently at, they have done a lot of community outreach work as well, and it was interesting that we kind of have a main guy that is the point of contact for that outreach. He's our community's pastor, we call him, but really, then it was interesting to see how he started off as a youth pastor, but then from getting to know the youth, then he would get asked more. Oh, can you do this funeral? Can you do this wedding? Then people start to you become their point of contact for these kind of faith
Exactly.
related,
Yeah.
or any of these faith issues. So, yeah, that's really interesting. So, what then would be I guess the day to day breakdown of activities of a chaplain? Then, what do you find yourself doing most of the time?
Well, most of my time spent with chaplain work is what I call witness. Um,
Mm,
Withness, as opposed to witness. Um, Law enforcement officers by nature are very cynical. They're very untrusting. That's just a common trait. And some of that is because of the people they have to deal with, the world in which they have to operate.
mm-hmm.
Um, they have sometimes a really a sick sense of humor. And if
Right.
you don't know them, you don't understand it. But that's part of their defense mechanism because of the things they see and do. And so
Okay.
I just spend time. I spend a lot of time with them. It might be a ride along, and especially when I was working for Community Outreach Ministries, I spent a lot of time actually at the sheriff's office, hanging out. I would go regularly. I've worked with 4 different sheriffs, and I'm proud to say that I had a great relationship with all 4 of them. And I would go in regularly, shut the door, and say, "Hey, what's going on in your life?" And we pray together.
Mm,
Uh, we also, the county in here, the county sheriff's office operates and runs the county jail.
okay.
So that's one of the reasons we have so many employees, because we run a whole jail, and our jail will have 150
Yeah.
200 people in it on a regular basis. So I recruited and trained some people to work in the jail doing the ministry. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and so we had an effective reach there. And of course, I was on call for the sheriff's department if they needed me to come in an emergency situation. A good example: an inmate hangs himself
Mm,
or tries to. They would call me, and I would come deal with the situation, and then deal with the employees who were a part of that scenario. Uh,
Mm.
so just being with them, being on call, and one of the big things too, and this is true to this day, my phone has not been away from me for 20 years, night and day, never off, never ring
Mm.
her off, because I'm on call. I'm on call from two of those three agencies that I told you. If there's a death, if there's a suicide, if there's some sort of traumatic event, they will call me in, and I'll respond as quick as I can. And
Mm.
they're not trained to deal with trauma, and they need to be able to do their job at the scene. So if I can come in and deal with the trauma and allow them to do their job, it's a great partnership. Uh,
Mm.
and then if there's a death notification to be made, let's say we find somebody that one of the things that people do here a lot is jump off a bridge. We have one of the tallest bridges in the state, Natchez Trace. We've had 20-something people jump off that bridge, commit suicide.
Wow.
And if I get called and go to the scene and there gather information, then I'm sent to the home to deliver the death notification. Accidents, suicides, shootings, you name it, and I've pretty much seen it all. And way too many times I've had to knock on a door, oftentimes in the middle of the night, and go in and sit down with somebody and tell them their loved one is dead. People
Mm.
ask me why would you want to do that, and how
Yeah.
horrific that is, and it is, and I think I probably have scars, to be honest with you, from doing it
Mm.
for 20 years. And I can tell you a lot of stories about things, and if you want me to, I will. Just things that happen, how people react.
Mm.
But Josh, for me, it's like, number one, that information's got to be shared. It's got to be done, and I'm glad that I get to do it because I get to bring God to the table
Mm.
in the
Yeah.
most dark moments of those people's lives. And it's amazing here how many people, I have a whole standard procedures that I go through in delivering a death notification. But after I've delivered the information and then I've dealt with the emotional response, my next question is always, is there somebody I can call? Because I'm not going to leave till they've got somebody there to support them. And
Mm.
sometimes that's been 4 to 6 hours just there with that person. But, do you have a pastor or minister I could call? Do you have family close by? Do you have close friends? And it's pretty shocking here in Middle Tennessee how many times the answer is no, I don't have a pastor, no, I don't have family, and no, I don't have any friends.
Mm.
A lot of people living lonely lives right out here in the midst of us.
Wow.
Um, so that's
And you
one of
wouldn't
the
even
things
know
we
it.
do. I?
You wouldn't even know it most of the time. If your neighbor, they may have no one.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it's so disheartening. So probably the two things that have been toughest for me are the death notifications and the horrific things that I've had to see as far as physical people blowing their heads off, people shooting themselves in the heart, people's bodies mangled in car accidents, whatever. But uh, that's what our men and women who are in law enforcement see every day.
Wow.
And they see things that the rest of the world doesn't have to see and
Yeah, I was
deal
I
with
was just about
things.
to say people just don't realize sometimes the I mean, on paper what they have to deal with, but when someone, actually tells them the specifics of what they have to deal with, you just don't realize sometimes what these people do among us, and they go under the radar, and sometimes, underappreciated for the traumatic experiences. The things you've seen, it must take a toll both on your personal life and your family life. Do you find it's tough to juggle being on call 24/7 with having a family and just running a household?
Yeah, at times it has been tough, but overall, not so much. My wife has been very supportive, and she understands what I do. She understands why I do it. Um, I think so. Balancing that has not been as much of a problem. The emotional residue from all of that, uh, I think I don't know why, and I can the only thing I can explain this has been God's protection. But the blood and the guts and the gore are bad,
Mm-hmm.
but that doesn't bother me as much as the emotional trauma that
Yeah.
I've had to deal with in delivering death notifications when you see people pass out or screaming and just the absolute gut wrenching pain Every time I pull up in a driveway to do that, Josh, I think, you know what? I'm fixing to knock on this door, and what I'm going to tell them is going to change their lives.
Yeah.
And I always say a little prayer right before I go in. One of the things that I do, while we're talking about this aspect of it in the pain, emotional pain, physical, one of the things that I'm trained in is called critical incident stress debriefing. And it is something that's designed to help law enforcement officers and others work through the trauma of a critical incident. And it's fantastic stuff. And to be honest with you, it hadn't just helped me in law enforcement; it's helped me handle it with all kinds of people. If there's a critical, if you see a dead child, if you witness a suicide, or you're there, you see a body that's mutilated, or that's traumatic.
Yeah.
And I always ask my guys when I get to scene, "You're okay? Are you okay? Are you okay?" They all lie to me and say yes, but that can't not impact you. And if you don't have a place to put that, or an appropriate way to process that, it can end up with some real mental, emotional problem, and down the line PTSD. So, big part of my training is in knowing how to work people through trauma and critical incidents.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that. So, what kind of techniques do you use to help people process these traumatic experiences? Traumatic isn't even a fair word, I think, to describe. That's almost overused. I guess it's it's life changing, but in the worst possible way.
Well, just plug in horrific then. How about that?
Yeah, that'll do.
It's a long, complicated process, but the biggest part of it, to be honest with you, is just talk. One of the things that I will do, usually don't want to do the actual big debriefing till 2 or 3 days after. When you're involved in a critical incident, a lot of things happen. You go into a time warp, vision warp, tunnel vision. There's a lot of things that happen. Your senses are heightened, and it's really not until 2 or 3 days after an incident that a lot of what you experience is going to come back to you. So if I want to debrief somebody 2 or 3 days after an incident, I'll have them walk through it with me from minute one. And even are there any smells that come to you when you think about this? Was it hot? Was it cold? And have them describe to me in their terms what they saw and what they experienced. And then I help them process that and put that where it can be healthy and not unhealthy. I hope you don't mind the term, but I tell my guys it's called emotional puking.
Yeah.
Sometimes your stomach's so
Getting it all
upset.
out, yeah.
Yeah, if your stomach's so upset, you say, "Man, if I could throw up, I'd feel better." Well, we're that way emotionally sometimes too. But if we stuff it and don't get that out and don't express ourselves and talk about it, in law enforcement officers, that'll build up and build up and build up to explodes in their lives in some really ugly ways.
And that's when they become less effective at their job, really, at that stage. Yeah, when they're, I guess they're emotionally compromised because the processing hasn't taken part, or it hasn't happened.
Great point. Law enforcement in general is one of the top 3 most stressful professions in the world. For years in sociological studies, it's been ranked in the top 3. Now I'm talking about stress. And usually the other 2 are dentists and lawyers. And I asked my guys when I'm training them, I said, "What's the difference between a dentist, a lawyer, and a police officer?" And they're all like, "Well, I don't know." And I said, "Well, about $200,000 a year."
Yeah,
is the
that's
difference.
true.
But anyway, that stress and traumatic incidences can build that stress. There's other stressors that we can talk about if you want to, but when that stress builds up, if it's not dealt with, if you don't let air out of that balloon, it explodes in their lives, and it will show in their performance. It will show in their attitude. But a lot of people don't realize the suicide rate among law enforcement officers is twice the national average.
I can imagine.
Twice as many law enforcement officers commit suicide, almost twice as many. It's changed a little bit because of everything that's gone on last year, but almost twice as many law enforcement officers commit suicide than are killed in the line of duty. It's amazing. Another thing, the alcoholism rate among law enforcement officers is twice the national average. Well, why? Well, it's an escape, although temporary.
Yeah.
And it's relatively inexpensive, it's legal, and it's socially acceptable. So alcohol becomes a big way that shows itself. Spousal abuse rate among law enforcement officers is higher than the national average. Illness rates are higher in law enforcement officers compared to the national average. And it's all because of the tremendous amount of stress that they have to be under every day.
Yeah. Yeah. So part of your job then, you would say, is teaching them healthy techniques and how to manage these
Exactly. In fact,
stressful.
that's exactly what the training part that I teach is understand the stress, because a lot of
Hmm.
these people are green. They're coming into it. They're rookies. They have no idea. Here it is. Here are the things that cause it. And then my last hour, I give them a toolbox. I tell them,
Hmm.
I give them to them. It's how do you deal with it? How can you deal with this and stay healthy? And one of the things for me is I have to practice what I preach, because I see the same things they do.
Mm,
And so I've
absolutely.
had to learn how to use those techniques myself, how to deal with that and make sure that I stay
Hmm.
healthy. Because if I'm not healthy, I can't help anybody.
Yeah. Are you supported by your fellow chaplains then, or I'm assuming there's a support network for the support
Yeah,
network, if you
well,
know what I
you know
mean?
what? To be honest with you, for the first 15 years, it was just me. And I
Wow.
answered every call. I was the only one. And about 5 years ago, we got big enough that I said, this is bigger than just me. And
Hmm.
so I established a team at the Williamson County Sheriff's Office, and I recruited some men and women. I trained them, put them in place. So there's 4 of us there now, working
Hmm.
with those people, ministering to them on a day-to-day basis. I helped start the program at Franklin Police Department, and there's now 3 of us that are on call there. And then
Hmm.
Nolensville Police Department, I started the program there, and there's 4 chaplains there, and I trained them as well. So where we went from 1 in the whole county, we now have 8, actually 8 in the
Wow. Yeah.
county, working with different law enforcement agencies. So I'm proud of that. It's bigger than
Yeah.
me.
That's amazing.
There's more people involved in it. There's more man hours and energy and ministry able to go into it because we've
Mm.
duplicated ourselves.
That's a legacy for sure on your part. You can look back and see, what was one is now eight. 8 people supporting. So I think that's a great legacy to look back upon.
Yeah, and to answer
Um.
your question, we all supportive of each other. I've always been blessed, even before those. I'm part of a Bible study, men's Bible study group that I started 12 years ago, and
Hmm.
I officed out of an old house. I mean, old, like over 100 years old, that a church let
Hmm.
us use.
Yeah.
And in the back of our house, we have this tree covered outdoors, and we built a fire pit there. There's a carport. So every Wednesday morning from 8:30 to even as late as noon, we meet there. We study the Bible. It's called Holy Smokes. It's called Holy Smokes because we sit around a fire. I don't care. We've been there when it was 20 degrees. When
Yeah.
it was 100 degrees. We still stay out there, smoke cigars, offering incense to God, and study. And we've walked with each other. And I mean, we walked through divorces. We've walked through
Mm.
economic problems. They're really my church in a lot of ways. And so I've got a group of men that know me and I know them. And when this stuff is heavy on me, I can share with them. And they're a real blessing. And as a matter of fact, right now we've got anywhere from 5 to 8 police officers coming to our Holy Smokes Bible study.
Mm. Wow.
It's kind of neat. So it gives me an opportunity to know what's going on in their heads, what they're
Yeah.
struggling with, and help them walk through it. So, yeah, I have to practice what I preach, and you got to deal with that stuff.
Mm.
One of the basic principles you're asking me about, and this is, I'd love to get this out there.
Hmm.
Well, one of the basic principles in critical incident stress debriefing is that whatever you saw, whatever you've experienced, is an abnormal situation. I've seen multiple people that blew their heads off and splattered it all over a bedroom or a car. That's not something that's normal. 99.9% of the world's population will never have to see that, experience that, deal with that, and have it imprinted on their brain for life.
Mm. Never mind repetitively.
Exactly. And so that's abnormal. So, and this is the key, whatever reaction you have to that kind of situation or incident, it's a normal reaction to an abnormal
Mm.
situation. Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't care what you've seen, what you've done, whatever reaction you have, it's not bad, wrong, whatever. It's a normal reaction to an abnormal situation.
Mm.
Now, what you do with that reaction and how you express that reaction can be good, bad, healthy, unhealthy, appropriate, or inappropriate. So it's not the emotion
Hmm.
itself, it's how you deal with that emotion. And that really frees people up.
Yeah.
beat themselves over the head because they feel this or they feel that, or they don't feel this or don't feel that. But then let's talk about dealing with that emotion, that feeling in a healthy, proper way.
So when you say that people naturally try to apply a normal reaction to an abnormal situation, what then is the abnormal reaction that is the best? Like, how do you train people to be able to deal with it in a non-normal way? Do you know what I mean? Like, how do people then um deal with these crazy situations in ways that aren't just their body trying to react to it in a way that it doesn't know how to?
Yeah, I'm not real sure your question there, Josh, but the abnormal sometimes is the things we talked about before. Shutting down, not being able to concentrate or focus, nightmares, flashbacks. Those are normal reactions
Mm,
that happen as a result of a critical
mm.
incident. Just teaching my guys and ladies that, hey, that's okay. Let's go from here. And if it continues, then they may need to get some help dealing with what possibly is turning into post-traumatic stress
Yeah.
disorder.
Yeah, no, I guess what I was trying to say is, if they're trying to react to these situations that are totally out of the ordinary in ways, if they're trying to react to that as if they're a normal human being going through life normally, what are the ways then that you teach them? How do you teach them to deal with these ridiculous situations that people very rarely encounter? What are the healthy ways to deal with that? That so they don't go down the route of being, ending up with post traumatic stress, or they don't end up with these terrible symptoms. What are the techniques to
Okay, I got
dealing with that? Yeah.
you. Yeah, I think the big key is talk.
Mm,
One of the points I give them 2 bucks is talk, talk, talk. Um, Law enforcement officers don't like to show weakness. They don't like to show vulnerability. And that's one reason they often hide the trauma that they're feeling themselves, or don't express it or don't get
mm-hmm.
help. I think that's changing, which is very exciting to me.
Okay.
Law enforcement in general in those kind of areas, in the 20 years I've been working with them, there's transition changes. They're
Mm,
realizing, if it didn't kill John Wayne, it shouldn't kill you either. That kind of mentality, buckle up. Um, so I think talking about it, having a life, one of the keys I tell my guys is, being a law enforcement officer is something you do. It's not what you are.
right.
If they allow that environment, that stressful environment to define them,
Mm,
if they don't have life outside of that, they're probably going to struggle.
yeah.
Um, I tell them too, uh, law enforcement officers have very unique sense of humor. They have a very unique perspective of the world. They're very cynical. They're very sarcastic. And if the only people they spend time with, the only people that they discuss these things with, is other law enforcement officers, you end up with what I call emotional incest. So I
Right.
encourage them to have a life outside of law enforcement, to have relationships out of law
Mm-hmm.
enforcement. I encourage them to have hobbies, or something where their mind doesn't stay fixated on those memories, or that trauma. For
Mm,
me, I'm a big fisherman.
yep. Me too.
I've got a 20-foot bass boat sitting out here about
Amazing.
15 feet other side of this wall in this office I'm in. And, when I get in that boat, and I only go fishing with people I really like. So,
Yeah.
you know, uh, you're within 20 foot of that person, but there's nobody else anywhere. Nobody can touch me. Nobody can pull on me. And for me, I see God's beauty in creation and in the world. I
Mm-hmm.
love to fish. There's not much that feels better than setting a hook on a big bass, and
Mm,
I can get lost in that. And so I encourage them to have hobbies, do things, have relationships with people outside of law enforcement, so they get a different perspective and not just inbreeding emotionally.
mm. Yeah, no, I was gonna say we don't have too much bass, I don't think, and at least we're near where I am, but um I'm a big fan of fishing for trout. That's the main thing around us. So
Oh,
I
love
could
to trout fish. We've got
yeah,
few trout street. My first ministry was in a very rural town where I played college baseball, and had the Little Red River, which was full of trout. So I trout fished a lot then.
mm,
I've been blessed. 2 years ago, I went to Mexico, to the number one largemouth bass lake
wow,
in the world. I go to
wow.
Minnesota every year and fish for a week with a buddy of mine up there, and but that's a real outlet for me. And,
Yeah.
and that so having those kinds of things and those kind of outlets are part of what I think has helped me at least keep
Mm.
part of my sanity in the last 20 years.
And it puts humanity in perspective with the rest of creation, in my opinion. You get to see that. I guess it's almost like when people say they see, when astronauts say they look back and see Earth from space, they then get a perspective on, everything that's going on within the world is all in context of this massive creation that's out there, a huge planet and a huge universe. So I guess then you get to see that the things that are going on in your life are not all that's going on in the world. There's still peaceful parts. There's still,
Exactly. But if you
areas
don't
where.
get out, yeah, if you don't get out of your little small space like the world of law enforcement,
Hmm.
you can't get that bigger perspective.
Yeah.
That's a great illustration.
Yeah. And have you ever seen then, to go back, you mentioned about some stories. What kind of is there a large number of law enforcement officers that end up having breakdowns? Do people end up, just almost losing their minds because they find it so hard to process what they're seeing?
I don't know that I've seen it to that extreme. The extreme of that are the ones that kill themselves.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah.
I see a lot of it that struggle emotionally, that get very hard, that get very removed, or again they turn to alcohol or whatever, or it shows itself in health related ways because our illness rate is much higher. So
Mm.
those are mainly the kind of things I see, or they'll just quit. They'll just get out of it
Yeah.
because they can't take it anymore. And
Mm.
and you know what? That's okay. I mean, don't stay in a profession that's destroying you.
Mm.
And so I support those people too.
Yeah. So to talk about a little bit more about, you said it was a bit of a calling for you, really, and you felt like it was a natural leading almost into this world. Um, what part does faith play in everything in your dealings with law enforcement, in terms of, do you believe um that there's almost biblical backing for these guys going out and protecting everyone else? Because I know a lot of people at the minute. I mean, to me, it's a shame. I've seen even church leaders talking about this idea of defunding the police and things like that, and even promoting this idea of law enforcement almost being a negative. And what are some of the biblical lessons you've learned about the role of law enforcement officers and what they do?
Well, I think the Bible is full of teachings about respecting those in authority over us. Law and order is all through the Bible. I mean, read the book of Leviticus. Um, Respecting our government, giving to Caesar what's due for Caesar. I think my biggest point, I'm a people person.
Mm-hmm.
And God, for whatever reason, has gifted me to be able to deal with pain and trauma in people's lives. Um, I ask myself the question, if Jesus would show up on earth right now in 2020, who would he hang around with? Well, I don't think he'd be hiding out in a church building. I think he'd be out in the community. And one of the things that Jesus said, he said, I didn't come for the well, I came for the sick.
Mm-hmm.
He was about broken, wounded, and hurting people. And I don't know a culture in our world that's broken, wounded, and hurting much more than law enforcement. And I could just see Jesus running to that culture to pull up next to them, to hold them, to hug them, to love them, to support them in what they're doing and the way that they protect and they serve. So to me, it's just trying to be an extension of what I think Jesus would do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I think that's the real core of it. What's going on in the United States right now and the backlash that law enforcement officers are receiving, uh, and it's much worse now than when you and I first connected 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
It's a mess in the United States right now. It's very difficult for me. Uh, I will say this: there are bad cops, but when a bad cop does something bad, you know who gets the most angry about that? The
The
good
good
cop.
cops. Yeah.
They're disgusted because that represents them. I mean, we pride ourselves on being a brotherhood and whatever, and so they would be the first ones to want a cop who
Mm.
does something illegal or inappropriate to be put in jail. But the
Mm-hmm.
reality is the number of cops that are really bad there's bad cops, and then there's cops that make bad decisions when they have to make split second decisions. And if you've never walked through that, then people might not understand that.
Yeah.
I don't want to justify anything that any law enforcement officer uh, has done that's wrong, inappropriate, or broken law. I want those people punished, but
Mm.
I do want the world to know that that does not represent the police kingdom, if you would. And I've told people, and this offends them sometimes, when I think about all the ministers I've known through 40-something years of ministry, percentage-wise, I knew more bad ministers than I've known bad cops.
Interesting.
And so when I see them persecuted, when my guys step out of our building with their head on a swivel going 360 to make sure nobody's going to ambush them, when I see them have to remove every relic of anything that would tell somebody in the community that they're a police officer when they're off duty because they fear for their life, that angers me. When I see people on TV that say things about law enforcement that because of my 20 years experience, I know what they're saying is not true. And I would bet you $1 million they've never sat down and talked to a police officer about their life or about their job. That angers me. And statistically, when it comes to shootings and those kinds of things, the statistics do not back up what people are claiming. That's just fact. That's not an opinion. The statistics do not back it up. So it's hard for me. I have pushed for greater funding for the sheriff's office for years. I get the opportunity to speak in public places to educate people about law enforcement. And one of the things that I always tell them, it's ridiculous how underpaid they are. And then when I hear people turn around and say, defund the police, it's just beyond me. To me, that's just the height of stupidity. And two, we had Antifa members running wild in the streets this week, and somebody fought back. And the first thing out of that Antifa member's mouth when he was getting taken care of, somebody called the police.
I heard that. Yeah.
So explain that to me. And they are all that stands between us and chaos. We need them. And I guarantee you, they're not doing what they do because they're getting paid a great amount of money or because they're going to get a lot of attaboys because it's a very negative world. They do it because there's some passion, there's some calling in their life to do what they do. And that's why I have great respect for them. From a faith standpoint, I really struggle with some of my brothers and sisters and some of the things that they're saying about law enforcement. I really struggle with their responses to, and these are people that I love and people that I've worked with, and I'm just like, where are you coming from with this? Do you really know what you're talking about, or are you just trying to throw out whatever itching ears out there want to hear? So that's presented a real struggle for me, to be honest with you, because I just can't believe what some people of faith, ministers in particular, are saying about law enforcement, police, and their reactions to some of the situations that we're having to deal with.
So when you hear someone, even people from a faith background, I've heard people, who are ministers and preachers say things like this. When you hear people say something along the lines of police officers and law enforcement is a vehicle that's furthering systemic racism and things like that, how what's your reaction to that as someone who's seen, and been involved with law enforcement for so many years?
I have not seen nor heard anything with the literally hundreds of officers that I work with that would reflect any kind of racism. I just haven't seen it. So from my experience, I don't believe that. I don't believe it's true. I don't think the law enforcement is a part of the foundation of racism. I think that's a problem that's been in the United States for a long time. I don't know that it's a problem that will ever completely go away. I will say that I think racism goes all ways. It's not just one way. And I've experienced that as a minister, trying to work with people of color. It goes both ways. I think it's something we need to continue to work on. But I don't think the reaction that we're getting is justified by the facts and the realities. Now, I'll say this. I spent 10 years working with convicted felons who were drug addicts, and it was through a program that's actually offered by the courts. The judge that ran it was a friend of mine, and he allowed me to come in and bring a faith element to that recovery program. And so at one time, I knew all the judges. It was very close, was in and out of court, spent time and had to operate in that sphere. And, of course, work with the sheriff. He's an elected official. And as a side note, it awakened me how important it is to put the right people in those positions, because if the right people weren't in those positions, I would not be able to do the ministry that I've done. But I will say and own the fact that I think our judicial system and our system of justice, uh, it's horrible, but it's the best in the world. And I think we've just got to take it where it's at and improve it. I think people, I don't think it's necessarily based on the color of your skin, but I can tell you from my experiences with my drug addicts and those that I work with,
Mm-hmm.
that the wealthy people are a great advantage in the judicial system. So, hey, let's make it better. I want
Mm-hmm.
equal justice too. I want injustice to be done away with.
Mm-hmm.
But I have trouble understanding how burning, looting, maiming, stealing, and killing
Yeah.
is in any way attached to trying to establish justice.
And it's important for us, I guess, to say to people, we all agree that racism is terrible. We agree that there's bad police officers out there. It's important for us to say that, I think, and you've admitted it yourself. Where I take offense almost, I take issue with, and I take some offense at when people, are spray painting that all cops are bad, on walls, things like that. That's where I think society has done a terrible job, and I guess the media is partly to blame for this, but of distinguishing between the occasional offender and the vast majority of good police officers. And we see so many occasions of where even if there's acts of terrorism, people come out and say say it was Islamic terrorism, people would say not all Muslims, and we all agree that this is a freak occurrence, that's and when Islamic terrorism happens, that's not how the majority of Muslims act, or nor do they support that. But we're not seeing that same level of not all police officers are bad when there's some that make terrible judgments, and when there's some that are evil and do terrible things. These are the things we need to be. I think we need to be more supportive of the everyday police officer who, whether you know it or not, is keeping you safe, and you just don't realize sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I don't know how much you're able to keep up with what's going on here, but it's really hard to keep that balance right now in the midst of the narrative that is
Mm-hmm.
being spread. And I really think this started 11 years ago, whenever it was Obama was elected. And there was really, at that point, his lack of support for law enforcement. And then out of that, the Black Lives Matters movement came up, and they have a very, very much an anti-police. I think the media is controlled by that element of people. And so the narrative that's being pushed is that they're all bad, or that
Mm-hmm.
policing in general is out of hand. And so I think the balance that you're talking about is exactly what we need. But in our culture right now, that doesn't fit the narrative, so it gets squashed or canceled.
Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to mention, I heard was listening to a great podcast. It's called the Just Thinking podcast, and I hope I'm getting their names right, but Daryl Harrison and Virgil Omaha Walker, he's known as. These are two African American podcasters. They are churchmen, religious, and they're involved in the church. And they did a great podcast about the topic of Black Lives Matter, which I haven't actually listened to all of yet. But one of them made a really interesting point, and that was if justice was served in cases of when there was police brutality, for example, and the occasions that happens, um, that doesn't further the Black Lives Matter agenda. So his fear as a black man is that if justice was served and the right outcomes happened and people were prosecuted, would this go away? Would the trouble go away in terms of riots and protests? He's not so sure, because he thinks that organization exists on the premise of justice isn't being done. So he worries that this will result in, I guess, suppression of the news of people that are being dealt with correctly, and some misinformation will be promoted in order to keep the agenda alive. And I've heard that from quite a lot of people who are African American or black, or people of color, that worry for their own community, that what will be a positive, or what would be success for them. You know what I mean? What's the standard in which they can say, okay, we don't need to protest, we don't need to do that anymore? And I don't know if we can ever reach the standard that they've set in terms of there probably every single year will be a black person that's killed by a police officer. If you're trying to stop that, I don't know if that'll ever stop, and that's what I worry about and what they worry about.
That's a great point, and here's kind of my take on that. I can say to you unequivocally that I think Black Lives Matter. I think all
I
lives
agree.
matter, but I think Black Lives Matter. I cannot support the Black Lives Matters movement in any shape, form, or fashion. To me, it's two different things. I have black friends, I have Indian friends, I have Hispanic friends, I have friends of all color. I've ministered to people of all colors. And just because of my faith, because of the God that I serve, because of the Jesus that lives in me, I love everybody. And color doesn't make any difference to me. But Black Lives Matters is not about. I don't think they're interested in social justice at all. Their stated purpose is to create a Marxist regime in the United States. They want to tear down the United States as it exists. Their goal is political. It's not racial. In fact, I've challenged people. Tell me one thing the Black Lives Matters movement has done for the black community. Name one. They've gone in and destroyed a lot of black communities in their rioting and looting and burning and those kinds of things. But as far as really doing something concrete for the black communities, it could be there, but I don't see it. And when I hear people and I see the NBA putting Black Lives Matters on their courts and players wearing Black Lives Matter stuff, whatever, I agree. Black Lives Matter. I agree. There's injustice that needs to be dealt with. But if they're saying I support the organization Black Lives Matters, it's anti-American. They want to tear down the United States. I can't support that. And I hear preachers stand up and say, I support Black Lives Matter. And I will say, okay, wait a minute. Do you believe Black Lives Matter, or do you support the Black Lives Matters organization? Because it's two totally different things.
Absolutely. And
again, let me finish that, Josh, because I thought you made such a great point. What's the end game? What's going to be enough? When will all this not be necessary? And I don't think it's tied to when justice is done. I think it's tied to when their political agenda is fulfilled.
And this is my worry. We're sitting here as two white men that are, we're openly saying that we believe that Black lives do matter, and we couldn't be more clear about that we love our Black and African American people of color brothers and sisters, and we want what's best for, not just them, but for our countries and for the world. And this is, I worry very much that that this seed that's being planted in terms of we're oppressed, we are, we're being treated badly, we are not equal. I just worry that this seed is only going to divide the society further and further until it's nearly at the point of civil war, because people really just don't trust each other. They think that they're working against each other. So I mean, this is a real worry for me, because when you love your brothers and sisters, you don't want to see them, or you don't want them to have a negative opinion of you. And I worry that these kind of movements are just, it's making the differences almost irreconcilable, between the two communities. And that's my worry, that we just, how do we get reconciliation in the midst of such division when the agenda is promoting it? You know what I mean? When this agenda everyone is backing. Not that the statement Black Lives Matter, I think nearly every normal, decent American and citizen would agree that, but the organization seeks to divide, and this is what I worry about.
Yeah, and I think without getting too political, division is a weapon used by people to get to a further end. If Black Lives Matters and other political groups can continue to divide us and pit us against one another, they can accomplish their end goals. So I share that concern, and I see it, and I think we're edging closer to. I don't know if it'll be a civil war, but there's going to be, at some point in time, the other side is going to start responding to Antifa and Black Lives Matters if these government leaders don't stand up and do something about it. If they come to Nashville and start tearing Nashville up like they're tearing up Seattle and other cities, there's going to be a problem.
And this is a worry, because obviously you're involved in law enforcement. I'm sure you don't condone sort of vigilante justice, but at the end of the day, that would be the natural reaction, a natural negative reaction to, you know, other negative circumstances that are being imposed in their cities. When people care about their businesses, they will take the law into their own hands. Sometimes, whenever police forces are stretched so thinly, and none of us, I don't think we want to see that. We want to see peace and the police being able to do their jobs. And in Wisconsin, we're seeing some of the cases of people, you know, uh, you know, shooting other people to protect themselves and to protect businesses, and that's by no means an ideal situation. People want to be able to rely on the police to protect them, but when in the current situation, people are being overrun. The police are all over the place, stretched so thinly, and it's almost a natural consequence of all that people will start to defend themselves beyond what is just normal law enforcement, and it's a worry for me. But I think it's definitely a natural consequence of the way things are going.
I think that's that word natural. People aren't going to sit down and take it forever. Businessmen aren't going to see their businesses burned down when nobody does anything.
Mm-hmm.
I think police officers, because of their sense of right and wrong, their sense of wanting to protect their communities, they're more than willing to step in and do what they need to do to take care of those situations. The problem, I don't care if it's Kenosha, if it's Portland, if it's Seattle, if it's New York, every one of those cities is run by very liberal governors and mayors.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens, the police officers are chomping at the bit, but those liberal mayors are telling them to stand down. And I tell you that's hard for somebody who's been trained and it's ingrained to uphold what is right, uphold the law, and to be told to stand down while people are destroying the city. That's very difficult.
Mm.
But I think you're right. And Josh, the only solution I know, and again, I don't want to sound preachy, but that's who I am, is God's going to have to do something. Somehow he's going to have to move in the hearts of men and women, and he's going to have to rain down peace and some kind of reconciliation. And we got to get leaders in place that'll stop this stuff, but yet move forward and correcting the injustices, improving our justice system. But we're not. You're exactly right. We're not heading in a good direction.
Yeah.
The natural, I like the way you use that word. The natural end of this would be turning man against man. And
Yeah, and like I said, I don't think that's what we want to see, but it's natural in terms of when people are threatened, that's how they respond, and that's me saying it in a way that's not condoning, but understanding the natural response to threat that humans have.
exactly.
Can we talk a little then just about how this is all affecting officers? In your job and ministering and talking to police officers, how are they dealing with this? I don't even know, vitriol, this sort of hatred that's being directed their way. How is it being a police officer at the minute, where people are against you?
The best word I can think is it's hellacious. It is so hard. They're fearful for themselves. They're fearful for their families. Um, they're scared sometimes to go out in public. And one of the trickle downs from all that is right now, who wants to be a law enforcement officer? Who's standing up right now saying, "Hey, I want that to be my career." So you've got departments like Franklin, like Brentwood, like the Williamson County Sheriff's Office that are having trouble hiring people.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, we have shortages, and that weakens the police force. So I just say this: the ones that are there are committed to it, and they have to be. I mean, there's no reason other than they're called to it and they're committed to it. But it's very difficult, and they are fearful. And I used the phrase a while ago. They keep their head on a swivel. They're looking all around them. And you know what? I know you know a little bit about Middle Tennessee, this area, Franklin, Brentwood. I'm in Murfreesboro. We don't get as much of that as some of the other cities, some of the vitriol. And we have people that pull up next to our police officers and give them a meal or give them a gift card and say thank you. So we're not in an area that is as vicious toward law enforcement as some others are. And I know the officers that I deal with, especially mine that come every Wednesday morning to our Holy Smokes Bible study, they're grateful for our community. They're not getting as much of that. but it's still scary, and we're still having trouble hiring people. And fear is the word. I mean, how many police officers people are just walking up to them and shooting back of the head, or whatever else? I mean, no warning, no anything. How many times now? I think this has increased because of the lack of respect and the way that law enforcement has been painted. But going right now and delivering a warrant, to somebody's house has become a scary thing because it's not
Mm-hmm.
uncommon for them just to open up shooting police officers.
Yeah.
So it makes their job much more complicated, more difficult, more. I've said it's one of the most stressful professions on the face of the earth. Well, this is just added to that stress.
Hmm. And I listened to a really interesting. I think it might have been as part of a podcast, but a certain commentator made the point that when you almost demonize the profession and make people not want to join it, then that doesn't really help your cause, because you're going to end up with the people who are the less qualified, the people with the worst temperaments. They're the ones that are going to end up continuing to apply, and the decent people will be too worried about, oh, this is going to affect my family life, my reputation if I end up doing this. So it doesn't do your cause any good to
And that's right. And it's like you said earlier. I mean, these are the people that protect us. These are the people that look. Who are you going to call if somebody breaks into your home? You going to call a social worker? I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're worthy of our support. You use the word demonize. That's a good way to put it. Think about this, Josh, and I think you'll relate to what I'm going to say. In March, April, right through there, police officers were being held as heroes because they were holding the line through the pandemic and COVID. Our workers in hospital, those people didn't have the option of not going to work, and they were doing so in the middle of a pandemic, and they were operating out in the community in the middle of a pandemic, and everybody was like heroes. Our healthcare workers, our police officers, whatever. And here we are just a few months later, and as you said, they're being demonized.
Mm-hmm.
All right, what happened? I mean, how'd they go to heroes to scum in 6 months? Well, I think the big thing that started it was the George Floyd
Mm-hmm.
killing in Minnesota. And I don't think anybody that's seen that believes that it was okay. My
No.
police officers were appalled by it. But does it warrant that slide to where we are now? And those men have been charged. They're not going to go scot-free. They've been charged,
Yeah.
and they'll be convicted. So here we go in a 6-month period from heroes to goats, and it's so hard for me to see that and to see that happen to our men and women. And one of the things that I found that I have in common, I feel very called to do what I do, and I know you're a spiritual man, so you understand that. But one of the first questions I ask my trainees when they come through is, why do you want to do this? Especially, why do you want to do this now? And what I have found with most of them, a lot of them have family history in law enforcement. A lot of them are coming out of the military, but most of them, they have a sense of calling. And so it may be a different calling than I have, but I relate to them on that level. I do what I do because I can't not do it.
Right.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of these men and women, that's it for them. They really feel called to do this. And I believe they have to, because again, they're not doing it because of the money that they make, and they're not doing it because of the attaboys they're going to, awards they're going to get, because that ain't going to happen. They're not doing it because they're going to get a great retirement plan, because it's not that good. They're not doing it for the healthcare program, because I know the healthcare program here, and it's not that great. So why are they doing it? Well, they're doing it because they're passionate about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of that culture that I've really learned to love. Their passion, their commitment.
And I've listened to the notable. She would describe herself as a feminist, but a common sense feminist thinker called Christina Hoff Sommers, and she's mentioned that when she observes, the culture at the minute in terms of parenting, and when people discourage their younger children, boys from playing in a way that could be seen as violent, pretending to be a police officer or pretending to be a fireman, or well, that's not really violent, but you know what I mean, these kind of more masculine type roles traditionally. When parents now are discouraging their kids from pretending to go around and be a police officer and catch the baddie, because it could be seen as violent or aggressive. But she sees that then as trickling into the mindsets of people growing up, that law enforcement and people involved in that are, it's a negative, it's an aggressive field, and again, it furthers this stereotype of that's something almost to be discouraged. But some people just have the temperament and calling to protect, to pretend to be, when they're kids, they pretend to be police officers because they want to be the hero. They want to be, that's what you want to be. You want to protect other people, and to discourage younger kids from playing in that way, and to say, oh no, that's too aggressive. That could have an effect in the future generation in terms of thinking negatively about these rules. But it's worrying to me to discourage people. And you mentioned calling, that's why I'm saying this, people who have this temperament, this calling to be the protective type people, willing to use force to protect others. To discourage that is worrying to me, that would be the case.
I think that's an excellent point, Josh, and especially when the narrative that is played out continuously in front of us through pretty much all media sources is police are bad, police are bad, whatever, yada yada. And when people grow up now, years and years, and that's the message that they're getting from our liberal media, you're exactly right. It's probably going to get worse, and fewer people are going to want to go into law enforcement. So I think I hadn't really thought about that long term, but I think you're exactly right.
And in terms of training of police officers, in your opinion, is their training adequate? Because a lot of people are questioning the training of officers in high stress scenarios where, perhaps, again, with the Jacob Blake situation, it could be said that the officer perhaps panicked and shot him more times maybe than he should have. Some people have said that's a training issue. In your opinion, do you think the training of officers is adequate in terms of dealing with high stress and high adrenaline scenarios?
That's an excellent question, and to be honest with you, that's different from agency to agency, state to state, county to county. Even there are some, let's say, state regulations to be what's called post-certified here, which includes, I think, 10 or 12 week continuous training they have to go through, and then their continuing education is very stringent too. So, in my experience, is with my people and the people I know is yes. I think so. Is that true everywhere? I don't know. Do we need to improve that training? Do we need to continue to massage that training to more fit situations that we're dealing with and the culture that we're in? Well, yeah, but we can always do that. But I think the training is pretty thorough. The continuing education is pretty stringent, what they're required to do. So yeah, I think it's here anyway. I can't speak for everywhere. Now it's really interesting. Defund the police is one of the things that came out, and then it was basically remodel the police. Okay, let's go to a different model, or let's evaluate and come out with some stuff. Well, everything that they came out with that needed to change, our agencies here already had in place. All of it, how we handle de-escalation tactics. Everything that they came out and said this needs to be put in place, we already had in place.
So what are some of the examples of the changes that they were wanting that you did have? Like, or would you say that you are ahead of the curve in some areas?
Well, I think the biggest one that came out was use of force. And when the police officer in Minnesota very visibly put his knee on a guy's neck, that is not acceptable. That has been outlawed, and another one's a chokehold. We've not allowed that for a long, long time. And so there's just two good examples. So use of force, specific kinds of force, dealing with confrontation. We've got a lot of things in place as far as de-escalation, those kinds of things. So I think the law enforcement entities that I deal with here are probably ahead of the curve compared to a lot of places. And then let's face it, when you're in a big city, even Nashville right here next to us, what they deal with and what they have to work with is much different than us who are out here in the suburbs. And you couldn't pay me enough money to be a police officer in Nashville, Tennessee right now. It's really bad and fixing to get work there. But here, I think our guys are trained well. Is it enough? I don't care what profession you're in, you can always use more training. One of the reasons they can't do more training is because they don't have funding to do more training.
This is true. Yeah.
So let's defund them so they can do even less training. So that's kind of a vicious cycle that I don't think people understand.
And it's very similar to the issues that are occurring along the border, where people say, about the conditions that people are being detained in at the border, and yet simultaneously they're cutting the funding so they can't have more money to make better conditions for these people. So there's so many scenarios where people complain about, they complain about, for example, this isn't done right, this isn't being done humanely, but then with their other hand, they're pulling all your funding so you can't make the improvements. And this seems to be going on in so many different areas.
Well, I tell you what, I'm 63 years old and lived my life here, all of them, and things make much less sense now than they ever have, Josh. It's just, it's okay, let's do this, not understanding it's going to have this impact over here, just those things that you mentioned. And I've talked to my wife and say, well, sometimes, well, I don't understand this. I don't understand how they're saying that. I don't understand how they can even think that. And then finally I get to the point where I'm like, you know what? I'm glad I don't understand it, or I'd be like them.
Yeah.
So a lot of things don't make sense. A lot of things are contradictory. And right now in the United States, that's sadly the world we live, and sadly that law enforcement bears a lot of the brunt of that.
hmm and you mentioned a little bit in your area that people were generally supportive of police officers on the whole. Um, is that support across people from all different races and skin colors? Do you find that you have a good relationship with African American and Black people in your community, in your police department?
I would think that for the most part that is true. There are still people who, I mean, Franklin, that they've had
Mm-hmm.
numerous marches in Franklin, nonviolent. Some of those led by ministers, even and
Mm-hmm.
local Black ministers that are really pushing the injustice button right now. So there's always those that I don't think it's pointed toward our police department stuff, because our
Yeah.
community has a good relationship. I think it's pointed at justice system and some of the other things and the injustices that are going on in other places. I think if you ask most of the uh, Black community in Franklin, Brentwood, that they would, and I could be wrong, but I think for the
Mm-hmm.
most part, they don't have a real problem there. They have a big picture problem.
Mm. Yeah, I
It's
guess
okay. In some cases, that's very justified.
mm. No, I was going to say, I guess where I'm heading with this is, in your role as a chaplain, and I guess in the future of the chaplaincy of your area, um, what do you think then are what are some of the ways in which, um, the chaplains and the more spiritual side of policing and law enforcement, how can you bridge the gap between, I guess, these two divided communities? What are the ways in which, going forward, how do we reconcile the differences between the protesters and rioting type people, who are outraged, and then police officers who are also outraged about different things?
That's a good question. And to be honest with you, I don't know how I have an answer to that. In our roles, we're not in a lot of situations where we can impact that. I think what we do is be very careful when we're around them about what we say, how we respond, our comments about the situation in the world, and make sure that they see us loving on all people, not just one group of people. I'm not in a lot of situation where I can really speak to the civil unrest or
Mm-hmm.
try to bring those two worlds together. That's just not within the scope of
Yeah.
what I or my other chaplains do. But what we model, what we say, what we do, how we act, I think we can have an impact with that, and I think our people
Mm-hmm.
do a really good job with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you mentioned earlier as well, just about, you have a lot of experiences and stories to tell. I wanted to ask a little bit just about, what are some of the most impactful experiences that you've had in your role as a police chaplain? In terms of positive and negative. What are some of the moments when you look back that really stick out?
Oh, um, I will never forget the first time I had to go deliver a death notification. Bad accident, 4 o'clock in the morning. Two drunk guys were on their way home out of Nashville, and a lady who worked at a local hospital and worked in the cafeteria was getting up and was headed into the Williamson County Hospital. They were drunk, crossed the center line, hit her head on, hit her so hard that it knocked her off the road and down an embankment. They called me to the scene. This was my very first one, so I was a rookie,
Yeah.
and gathered the information. There was some question about her identity, so I had to go to the house to deliver the death notification. And so the accident happened at 4:00 in the morning. By the time I got to the house, it was about 6:30, 7:00, and so it was daylight by then. And when I pulled up in front of the house, it had huge windows, glass windows in the front. And as I pulled up in the driveway, I looked up there, and there's the noses of 3 little girls pressed against that window. And they were waiting for the school bus. And I thought, I've got to go in and tell them that their mother is dead. And I had to go in, and I did have to do that, and the husband. But then because we weren't sure of her identity, I had to get him to go with me to the county morgue and identify the body. And, you see that happening on shows on television.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you, brother, until it happens to you, where you actually see that happen, or you're standing there with somebody and you have to pull that sheet back. So that first one, especially because those 3 little girls, sticks in my mind. I've had people attack me. I went and knocked on the door of a man one time to tell him his daughter, college student, had lost control in a car, had crossed the median. It was interstate, crossed the median, and went into the other lane and got hit by an 18-wheeler. Devastating accident. I had to knock on his door and wake him up at 2:00 in the morning. And when I told him, he turned very violent. He accused me of playing a terrible joke on him. It just wasn't true, and he came after me.
Wow.
I've had people who have passed out on me. I have had people who just took off running through the house, throwing anything to get their hands on, yelling and screaming. One of the most touching to me was a man had a bicycle accident here, and at a high speed, he lost control of his bike. It threw him head first into a guardrail and took off almost half his head. I had to go to his house to tell his wife. And when I knocked on the door, she came to the door. She was a very attractive lady. They were probably in their 50s, early 50s. And she was dressed up. Obviously, it was a Saturday morning. And told her who I was and whatever, and if I could come in. And she said, yeah, I'm just waiting on my husband to get home from his bike ride because we're going to lunch together. And I had to go in and tell her that he would not be coming home and what had happened. She went into probably the deepest shock I've experienced, and I will never forget this. She started putting her hands on me and put both hands on my face, just touching me and touching my arm. She said, you're not real. You're not here. And she did that for about 20, 30 minutes. And that kind of trauma and that kind of shock and that kind of pain, again, that wears on me worse than the blood in the guts. And there's other stories too, but those, you asked for some that stick in my mind. The neat thing about that is that lady whose husband was killed in the bicycle accident contacted me recently. And it's been several years, and she chased me down on Facebook to say thank you. And you'll never know how much it meant to me, the grace that you showed, and the way that you walked me through those hours.
Yeah.
You know what? It makes it all worth it, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, if God can use me that way, if it can have that kind of impact on people, I'm good.
And is it challenging? I mean, I know you're there to bring God's peace in that situation in some way. Is that generally something that people can people even detect that, or is it just a matter almost of doing that within yourself, being a witness to them, and maybe years down the line, when they reflect, they'll see that. But
I think the key thing, and you touched on it, is what I call presence, and that's presence with a C, not with a T. Just me allowing God to speak through me, allowing to have a presence there, a godly presence, a peaceful. This lady mentioned the word, how graceful I was. One of the things that I do when I go in a house is I immediately scan the house or the area that I'm in. And if I see things that reflect that these are people of faith, that opens the door for me to go that direction. If I don't see something like that, or it's not reflected in what I hear from them, I may not necessarily take it as much in that direction. I always ask if before I leave, if I can pray for them, and I ask for permission. I don't know that I've ever been told no. And then I always leave my card and ask them if I can follow up. And again, I ask them for permission. I don't want to bug you. For me, it's kind of like I may represent the most painful moment in their life. So they may not want to hear from me again. They may not want to see. But those are things that I try to do. And when at all possible, try to bring hope. Why does a car accident happen and a 17-year-old girl dies? There may be physical reasons why, but it's always the question. There's unanswerable questions. Suicide. Why did he do that? Well, I don't know. What I try to bring to people is what we do know. I don't spend a lot of time worrying about what I don't know. I try to focus on what I do know, and I do know that God said He's always with us. He'll never leave us. I do know that He said that I will never leave you and I will never forsake you. I do know that He said all things work together for good for those that love the Lord and called according to His purpose. I do know that He said, my God shall supply all your needs through His glorious riches in Christ Jesus. So kind of and that's not just delivering a death notification, that's in the pastoral counseling that I do, or when people are in the midst of a divorce or dealing with drugs or whatever. Let's talk about what we do know. Let's claim what we do know. We'll continue to wrestle with those questions we can't answer, but let's not forget to claim what we do know as absolutes. So that's kind of my philosophy of where I try to take people.
And you've mentioned there just some of the reactions that you've seen from other people. For yourself, what has been the most overwhelming situation for you yourself in terms of just you processing what's going on? What was the most overwhelming situation for you?
I hadn't thought about this in a while, but as soon as you asked that question, I've got an immediate answer. 2 years ago, in my work as the chaplain for the high school football team here in the Outside the Lines ministry, I got a call on a Sunday morning, and it was our head coach, who I'm very close to. And he said, Corky, I think we've got a dead football player. And I'm like, what? And he said, yeah. He said, I'm not for sure, but let me call you right back. And he called me back, and sure enough, a few minutes later, Susie and I were getting ready to go to church. It was a Sunday morning. And he said, yeah, so-and-so is dead. And long story short, 15, 16 of our football players had a camp out that night. And when they got up the next morning, they couldn't wake him up. And again, long story short, he had died of alcohol poisoning, basically drowned in his own vomit. But those kids were there. Those kids were there with their buddy trying to do CPR on him. One of the dads showed up that owned the property and whatever. So coach said, I don't know. He's a football coach, They're not used to having to deal with this kind of stuff. He said, what do I do? I said, well, tell you what, call your football coaches, tell them to meet me in the field house in 45 minutes. And we'll meet and we'll go from there. Man, I walked in that coach's office and grown, strong football coach men are just devastated. And so I spent the first little bit helping them deal with their pain. It was excruciating. One of our players was dead. 15 other of our players had been with him. And okay, so then it was, okay, what do we do? And I gave them some keys on how to help the kids too, how to handle trauma. And then it was like, we got to deal with the parents. And I said, why don't you call a parents meeting for 3:00 here in the field house, and we'll deal with them, and you and I will do whatever. So they did that, and so that was about 3 hours later. And I walked out of the coach's office in that field house, and there was over 200 parents, players there. And it was the most somber, painful. I had to step back for a minute before I could start. It is the most emotional thing I've ever dealt with. And when I'm beginning to start, I look over to my left, and coming through the door were the parents of the young man who had just died. And they wanted to be there with their football family. And that is just the most emotionally painful situation. And it went on from there. We had that meeting. I counseled with kids. We had visitation. The funeral itself was atrocious, and it was a long, emotional, and very draining week. And
And was this a kid that you had known yourself, that you'd work with?
oh yeah, I was close to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know all those kids. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm their football chaplain. I'm with them every week. I was with them 2 or 3 times
So
during the week.
this isn't just a friend of yours. It's a coach from another area. This is one that you've dealt with and
Oh
worked
yeah,
with, and yeah.
I work specifically with one school with this
Okay.
program. Now, I've been asked to go other places and speak and set programs up, but this one particular school is the one I've worked with for 25 years. And so they're like family to me. And we've worked real hard on those 25 years of building a family environment. And there's an unbelievably positive spiritual environment considering the fact that it's a public school. And we've worked hard on building it. We're not trying to convert kids to anything. We're just trying to teach them how to be godly men and women, and go from being good football players to being good students, to being good husbands, good fathers, good businessmen. That's what we're trying to grow. And so yes, but that I don't ever remember feeling as emotionally empty and drained as after that week. And that day.
And just to end on a more positive note, what are some of the positive experiences that you've had? Some of the ones that have uplifted you, some moments that have stood out in terms of you being able to minister and help people. What positive experiences stand out for you?
One of the most fulfilling things that I got to be a part of was when I was working with the drug addicts and drug program, to see some of those people latch on to faith as their answer to their addiction. And I can't tell you how many of them I still follow me on Facebook. And they've got their lives turned around, and they're drug free, and they're good citizens. And just delving into, when I first started working with that program, I'm like, what do I have to say to a drug addict? I've never done drugs in my life. I don't understand that world. I don't understand that culture, but I found it to be one of the most fulfilling, enjoyable, and what I learned too about humanity is that when they would pour their stories out to me, and I would hear where they've come from and how they ended up where they ended up, I can honestly say that if I had been in the same circumstances, I may very well have ended up in the same place. And so we have to realize that we're all human. Everybody's got a story, and we need to do less judging and more loving. And those working with those people was a joy. There's a lot of them that didn't get turned around. There's a lot of them ended up back in jail, but the success stories there, and them telling me that I was a part of that success story is probably some of the most fulfilling. And the other thing would be just hearing back from football players who've come through my outside the line programs, even 10, 15 years ago, and tell me as grown men how much it still means to them and what they took. And those are the things that are, or the wife that her husband was killed in a bicycle accident, and out of the blue 2 years later, she contacts me to say thank you. That's the fulfillment. But I think even deeper than that, I have always felt like I was doing what God built me, designed me, and called me to do. And no greater fulfillment than that. I've never felt more about God's business than I have in the last 16 years working in the community in this ministry. I really felt like I was about his business. I feel like I was around the people he would want to be around. And so that in and of itself brings peace and calm, and gives me a sense of fulfillment.
What can our listeners pray for in terms of both your ministry and in terms of law enforcement in general? What things can people keep remember in their prayers that you think are particularly important?
I pray for our law enforcement employees in general. Again, unless you pull up alongside of them and understand them and understand the situation that they're in, you can't unless you pull up next to them. And so they're in a bad spot. The United States is in a bad spot. So we need to pray for them. And I always tell people we need to pray for them spiritually, emotionally, familially. I mean, it's all parts of their lives that the situation they're in and just the pressure of law enforcement in general touches. And then I think as a whole, we need to pray for leadership. I think some of the narrative that's out there could be changed if more leaders would step up to the table and quit preaching to tickling ears, and let's just be straight up about this. I think those are the two main things: is the individuals themselves, their families, and then pray for our leaders, because it's got to change. I mean, the United States can't keep going like this.
Yeah.
There's an end game, like you said. We don't want it, but there's an end game.
Yeah.
That's not what we want. So I think pray those things. I would encourage people, sit down and talk to a cop. Have a conversation with them. I guarantee, I don't know any cop wouldn't be glad to sit down and talk to them about their profession, what they feel right now, what's going on. I've had some people on Facebook that lamb-blasted cops, and I can't sit back and take that. And I just said, hey, tell you what, you come over to my office Wednesday, there'll be 5 to 8 police officers there, and they would love to talk to you. Have you ever talked to a cop? Of course they hadn't. And so I think those men and women would love to have an open conversation with people. Yeah. So if you have an opportunity to do that, the main message that they're getting right now is negative. And I don't think everybody is negative about law enforcement. So I think if God's people will be more vocal about supporting them, letting law enforcement officers know in the midst of this that they are loved and supported and appreciated, I think that goes a long way too. That could be letters to the sheriff, whoever. That can be taking meals down to them at shift break. I mean, there's a lot of ways that can show itself. It can be walking up to a policeman on the street saying, hey, just want you to know, with everything that's going on, I really appreciate what you do. You would not have any idea how far that goes with our men and women.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say to people, Christian people who are perhaps on the fence about throwing their support behind the law enforcement community because of the notion that they may be racist, or these negative sort of aggressive perceptions? What would your message be to people who have a negative opinion at the minute and are not sure they feel the support? How would you convince them that they are doing good and they're doing God's work, in your opinion?
I'm afraid that there's a lot of people out there that can't be told any different, that they're closed off to any other message besides what BLM politicians and the media give them. If I did, just what I just said, sit down and talk to a police officer, or sit down and talk to somebody that knows something about law enforcement. Educate yourself, because I think for people who are making some of these outrageous claims, it's from a lack of education. It's out of, and I don't mean this in a critical way, it's just ignorance. They don't have the facts. They don't have the information. So I would just say educate yourself. Spend some time with law enforcement officers or with those of us that work with them. Be careful about buying everything that comes across social media or mainstream media on television, whatever. Don't swallow all of it. It's not all true. Good or bad, it's not all true.
Yep. Do your research.
Yeah, do your research. Get your facts. Don't let somebody else do the thinking for you. I wish more of people who are in that position were open to education and input. And I certainly, and that's why I've enjoyed this time with you so much, because I want to spread the truth. I want to spread the good news about law enforcement. And so you're giving me an avenue through which to do that, and that's why I was excited about being with you. And it's been very good. I appreciate it.
No, you're very welcome. Just to finish off, do you want to give some details of some of the organizations you've been involved with? I know this football ministry is one that's really stood out. Is that something that's still going on that people, if they're interested, could even get involved with, or other such, chaplaincy? What are some of the ways that people can get involved with some of the organizations you've talked about?
I think the outside the lines thing, and I'm proud of this, even though I've stepped back a little bit because I retired from Community Outreach Ministries, all that work is still going on because of the men and women that I recruited and put in place. I have stepped back from just this year, from outside the lines. That was hard after 25 years. First year I hadn't been involved with it extensively with that football program in 25 years. But it's the concept of outside the lines, they're continuing it because they want it. So I'm excited. You mentioned the word legacy, and I don't know. I don't think I'm anything special, but to me, it's important that the things that we started weren't just about me, that they're now continuing. I think if somebody wanted to get involved with athletes and do the kind of thing that we've done, I certainly would be glad to talk to them and tell them what's behind that, what the philosophy behind it, what that looks like, what it can look like. I think as far as chaplaincy, I think a lot of ministers need to look at volunteering as a chaplain, just like how I started. is somehow look at possibly how to get involved. I don't think just anybody can be a chaplain. I
Mm-hmm.
think it needs to be somebody with a ministry background. I don't mean that ugly. It's just because of the kind of work that it is. So I think they can't come over here maybe in Nashville, Tennessee with me and jump in. But I think there's kinds of things like that they can do, they can dream, they can envision. When I started Community Outreach Ministries, it's just where can I get a crack in the community?
Mm-hmm.
Where's their door? And law enforcement presented that. Outside the lines presented that. Drug court, which is a drug program I got involved with, presented that. Then we developed a ministry to caregivers, and that gave us a crack into a whole nother section of the
Mm-hmm.
community. So that was kind of where all that came from. And I'm thankful that all that work is continuing with or without me.
And I know you're on Twitter. For example, are you happy for people just to drop you a message or send you a tweet if
Oh,
they have
sure.
questions? Yeah.
I'm not on Twitter as much as I am on
Facebook.
Facebook. I'm
Mm-hmm.
pretty heavy on Facebook, some on Instagram, some on Twitter, but not a whole lot. But yeah, my Twitter handle is at Corky, COM, which is Community Outreach Ministries.
Mm-hmm.
And then Corky French on Facebook. And yeah, I love visiting with people, talking with people. Be glad to answer any questions. Just don't send me hate mail.
I hope none of my listeners would do that, but no, I think it's just from talking to you and hearing what you've had to say. I think it's important that I recognize your contribution to your community, because I mentioned your legacy. It's when it's all, when you say it all out loud and I'm listening, I can see how much of a positive impact in terms of actually almost like trailblazing in your community, setting up these organizations, working with organizations that you've done. So I think it's important to recognize that, and I think anyone listening who wants to know more should definitely get in touch, because I'm sure you have a lot of wisdom that you could pass on to them, and it would be great just if someone listening was able to, even if they were able just to get a bit of wisdom from you that could help them along their journey. I think that could be a really positive outcome from us, from our conversation. We're just chatting about these issues, but if people listening can then make decisions in their life based on hearing what you've had to say, I think that would be amazing. So I'm glad that you're open to be contacted about that. But it's been amazing just to go through some of these issues and to talk to you. So I'm really grateful for you taking the time to just to be involved. And I know I was really just a random guy off the internet really when I contacted you, but I got the feeling somehow, I don't know whether it was the fact you were holding a big fish or you had the glasses on, but I thought you'd be an easy guy to talk to and down to earth. So yeah, thanks so much for joining me today, and
But
it's been great talking.
Josh, thanks. And I don't know that I've ever done an interview that I've ever been more comfortable, and I appreciate that. And I hope we get to do this again.
Absolutely.
If nothing else, this is the first time I've ever used Zoom. So there you go.
So if anyone, go ahead.
My last thought that I want to get out is important, is I appreciate your kindness and the things that you're saying about me. I'm just an old fat guy that for some reason God used, and whatever happened, whatever good, whatever legacy, it's not about me. It's about him and what he has used me to do. And that's really important. I don't deserve the glory. He does. So thank you.
Amen. So if anyone wants to see another show between us two where we talk about other issues or further down the line, put a comment down in the YouTube comments, and give us a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. But to everyone listening, thanks so much for joining. I hope you enjoyed, and yeah, we'll see you next week on our next episode. Thanks for joining.